Welcome everybody to Alchemy Presents Tales from the Loop. Today we're going to go through about a 90-minute kind of tutorial on how to use Alchemy as a platform and how to integrate your own game of Tales from the Loop in through Alchemy. Today I am joined by my illustrious co-pilot here, Vinny, and of course myself to help kind of we're gonna team up and do two different tracks here. Vinny's going to be talking more along the line on the platform side of things, and I will be talking more along the line of the actual game itself. So the first half is going to be Vinny here, and Vinny, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Sure thing. So, welcome to our little Learn to Play session we've got going today regarding Tales from the Loop and specifically our Start Playing Games Weekend in the Loop event. We're super excited to bring on very soon here. What I'm going to do from here is I'm just going to speak a little bit about Alchemy and kind of give a bit of a crash course on its core features within the platform. So to kind of get started here, what you see here is the Alchemy homepage. Before I get too deep into things, I also just want to mention Alchemy, for anyone who doesn't know, is a virtual tabletop. Like many of the other online platforms that you know and love, we just have a bit more of a focus on cinematic immersion. Right? We want to be able to say that the narrative is the most important thing happening at the tabletop, and all the kind of tools and mechanics and features that are needed to sort of weave that narrative should be secondary to the story itself. And so, as I get a little bit in here to speak more on our core feature set, you'll be able to kind of see that philosophy sort of bubble up to the surface as we get into things moving forward. So if you don't have an Alchemy account, it's really quick and completely free to make one. You can go to app.alchemyrpg.com to go ahead and make a quick account just by giving yourself a username, an email that you sign up with, and then creating a password. And once you get there, you'll be greeted with this screen right here, which is our Alchemy homepage. Now, here on the homepage, you'll be able to see a couple things. You'll have a bunch of areas of the platform to navigate over here on the left-hand navigation bar. And you've also got a quick view of any of the recent games that you've either played or spectated, as well as any games that are currently being broadcasted live on the platform. Streaming is a pretty big pillar of what we're doing, and we'll get into a little bit more about what that's gonna look like in the future. But just to get started here, we're going to be mainly discussing the Alchemy game experience today. And while Dan's going to really go a bit deeper into the player's experience as he speaks very specifically on our Tales from the Loop integration, I'm going to speak from the perspective of a game master. I'm going to walk the game masters through their own kind of view while also maybe speaking to a couple quick differences that players might notice when they're playing their games as well. So to get started here, let's say you're a game master, you're ready to get your game up and rocking. We have this white Create New Game button right up here in the top right. And clicking that will bring up a quick modal where you can go ahead and insert any information to quickly create your game. And so in this case, we want to give our game a title. In this case, I will give my my title here, Start Playing Games, Tales from the Loop game. Because it's completely unoriginal and exactly what it needs to be. From here as well, we get to select the system. Now, I can select any system for any of the books that I have on Alchemy. And in this case, because I have Tales from the Loop, I can go ahead and select it right there. And you'll see some of the UI changes, in the screen as well to reflect that. And then finally, if I have any content that I want to enable for Tales from the Loop, whether it's my own content or anything I might have bought off the Alchemy Marketplace, all of that content shows down here. And so I'm free to enable it or not, if I want to do something that's completely on my own. But what I'll go ahead and do here is enable our enhanced version of the Tales from the Loop core rulebook real quick. And so what this will do is it'll preload all of that content into my game, and then I can reference it in a bunch of different ways, which I'll get into in just a little bit here. So once I'm all done with that, we can go ahead and click the white button right here to progress into the Alchemy game experience. After just a couple seconds, you'll see your game is created and ready to go. This screen here is a screen anyone's going to see when they log into a game, whether they're a game master, whether they're a player, whether they're a spectator. And it's called our game lobby, and it basically gives you a chance to sort of test your levels, make sure everything's working right, before you're broadcasting yourself to everybody else at the tabletop. So you can use these buttons right here to enable or disable your audio or video controls, because Alchemy does have integrated voice and video chat. Uh, Over here, you can go ahead and adjust any of the game volumes. So in case your ears are getting blasted out, you can go ahead and turn all of those volumes down if you need to. You can go over here if you need to back out to the homepage for any reason. And then just a couple other things down here in the sort of bottom center of your screen. If there's any content warnings enabled for the game, those will display here before you create a kind of subject yourself to that kind of content. And then finally down here, anyone who is currently logged into the game will have their profile picture showing there, so you know who's kind of in there as you join in. But when you're ready to go, you can go ahead and click Join Game right here, and it'll bring you into the main sort of core story mode experience within the Alchemy platform. Now, after the first time you create your game, you will have this little summon your party message pop up here. And this is for you as a game master to basically invite all of your players into your game. A very quick and easy way to do things is that you can actually click the chain icon right there and copy this very special link to your device's clipboard. And then you can distribute that to your players. And when they click that, as long as they're logged into Alchemy on their browser, they will automatically be added to this game where they can set themselves up, create their character, and get ready for the session ahead. Now, if I didn't want to send out an open link, I do have the ability to add players here. When I do click this, it'll take me to the Players tab of my game settings, where if I wanted to, I can go ahead and copy the same link I just saw before. Or if I want to add other people by their Alchemy username, I'm totally free to do that as well. So in this case, I want to add Dan to the game. I actually want to add 2 of his accounts to the game. And so I know his one account is Nat1Fun. And so as soon as I start searching that, I can go ahead and invite Dan's account to the game. And then his other one is Nat1 Productions, which I'm also going to invite here. Now, what's cool about this too is that I invited Dan to a game as a player, but maybe I wanted to promote him to a game master as well. As a game master, I'm able to promote other people to game master, and so now we've got 2 in the game. If we do any kind of split GMing, or maybe I take a break 1 week, he takes a break 1 week, you're able to have 2 game masters in the game if you'd like. And then we've got Dan's other account here, who's logged in as a player. Now, I'll get back to a little bit more about game settings in a second here, but just to kind of save my change by clicking the white button at the bottom there, I'm just going to bring out the sort of core Alchemy experience. And as you can see here, we have a pretty clean user interface. It's basically just enough to sort of play your games, but keeps enough out of the way so that you can see these beautiful background images and motion effects. You know, if you have any music in your game that's sort of playing, that's pumped to your headphones or speakers as well. And it's really all to kind of help you all find yourselves immersed into the game that's sort of unfolding before you. Game masters can control what's here and what's not here, and I'll get into that a little bit more when I speak on scenes. But just understand that everything right here is kind of controlled by the game master, and everything around the screen, all these different panels that you see, are really just for managing the gameplay itself. So what you're seeing here is the game master's view specifically. I'm going to go around the horn and show everything off here that you might need to know. Just understand player's view is just a little bit different than the game master's view, but it's largely similar, and I'll point out where some of those are, and Dan will show a little bit more about what those look like on his end. So to get started here for game masters, along the entire left side of our screen here, we have the journal and the notes panel. Now, the journal panel is really just kind of like your message board for the game, right? If I want to type hi to people in chat, you can see that my message comes up here. It says hi. If other people want to respond, they can type in the journal panel as well. We can all message back and forth there. If I want to delete a message for any reason in there, I can go ahead and, as a game master, select any message off to the left here, or as a player, select my own messages and click the little circle right there to select it. Click the little delete button that pops up there and go right on in and remove that message. In addition, there's a bunch of other things that will show up in the journal as well. A lot of actions in Alchemy and your dice rolls and things like that. But the journal field down here actually takes a couple commands. We have a lot of these listed out in our chat within Alchemy article in our knowledge base, and I'll show you where to find that in a little bit. But just to kind of give you a bit of a primer, you can do things like roll specific dice using the journal panel. So if I wanted to roll 3 8-sided dice for any reason at all, I can type /roll and then 3d8. And then once I do, you can see that my dice sort of roll up here in this journal card. I can see the result and I can narrate everything that happens from there. So that's just sort of the journal panel in a nutshell. We do have the Notes tab then, which you can select at the top using the tab up here. And the Notes tab is basically great for like if you need any sticky notes during the game, right? So let's say that my players completely zigzag from something I was ready to show for them. And I need to come up with a shop name and a shopkeeper and maybe some inventory to show them. Let's say that I think of a shop name for the shopkeeper, and I think her name is Lara. I can go ahead and just type Lara right here, and go ahead and save my note by clicking the feather in the input field. And then Lara will suddenly be saved right here for my notes, where I can either edit the note, I can delete it in the future, and it really gives me a place just to sort of store some quick thoughts, and maybe I can incorporate those into my session notes, after the game is ended for the day. What's also really cool about the Notes tab is that it's completely private to you. Every game master and every player has a completely private Notes tab. No one else can see that information. So if you as a game master are a little worried about hiding stuff from your players by using the Notes tab, don't be. They have no way of seeing that information. And so that generally summarizes the journal and the notes overall. Now in the bottom left here, players will generally have a couple more panels. You'll see these when we get into Dan's presentation later. But just understand that those panels are generally for managing the character sheet. And so it will have a lot of information like equipment and inventory, attributes, skills, things of that nature. So moving from the left side of our screen, we're going to go to the bottom middle down here. And we've got 3 really important buttons. We have the gear icon or the options menu. We have our floating action button, which serves as our dice roller. And then we have our audio mute and unmute button, as well as our audio selection carried right next to it. So I'm going to first speak a little bit more about the options menu, because there's quite a few in here. First things first, if you enter an Alchemy game, you need a way to leave it. And so if you want to quit your game as a player or as a game master, you'll always find the quit game option right here. As a game master, I have this edit game option, and as a player, I have game settings right there. They both show the same information I'm about to go into. The only difference is that game masters can go ahead and edit the game settings, while players generally cannot do that. So if I click on game settings, we have 5 tabs here. First off is our games tab, and this is where a lot of these sort of core settings for the gameplay live. We can go ahead and if I want to, I can change the name of my game, and from there, go ahead and just, for any reason, if I want to change the table up, I can do that. If I wanted to, I can add a description for my game. So if I stream my game in Alchemy, that description will actually be publicly available to people when they look at my game on the Alchemy homepage. And then we get into some of the other information here. We have the game's artwork, which is displayed as a thumbnail when a player or game master is viewing that game from the Alchemy homepage. If I wanted to, I can go ahead and change this thumbnail out. It's set as the Tales from the Loop cover art by default because I enabled the core rulebook for the game already, and it's already in here. I can also switch the theme up for the game. So again, because I enabled the core rulebook, we have this cool Tales from the Loop theme. We've got this orange accent color everywhere. We have the Tales from the Loop symbol glyph right here, and it's visible in a couple areas of the platform. Other themes might have effects on fonts or things of that nature. And if I wanted to, I can go ahead and change the theme for any content created and associated with the game right here. So the only other option I have right now is changing back to the default theme for Alchemy. And if I do that, you'll see we kind of go to our sort of Alchemy gold color here with our Alchemy glyph and our default font information. So I'm going to go ahead and change that back just because it's a little more thematic for this presentation. But just understand that themes are all aesthetic sort of configurations for your game. Finally, we have a couple toggles down here. We have Allow Watchers, and this is the toggle that allows your game to be available on the Alchemy homepage for spectators to join into and watch and listen on and even chat to some degree. We have private GM roles here, which is a great one for a lot of people. Let's say that I'm a game master who, maybe wants to fudge a role every now and again for the sake of the narrative. If I go ahead and, enable that and save my change. So if I want to go ahead and roll some dice here, you'll see that all these windows are showing as gold now. And that means that all of our messages right here are private specifically to me. They're not being broadcasted out to Dan and his other accounts right here. And so he can't actually see those results. So if I need to, I have the dice so I can sort of move the narrative along. But if I want to take a bit of a detour from what those results were, I'm free to do that with private game master roles enabled here. We then have universe search here. Universe search allows you to basically search for all the content enabled in your game, like the core rulebook. I'll show you what that is in a little bit. But for now, just understand that this particular toggle only affects whether players have access to a universe search. So whether they should have access to particular books or content for your game that's enabled for it, maybe they shouldn't. And so you can go ahead and toggle that off if they shouldn't have access to that information. We also have saved journal messages here, and all that really does is make it so that if I leave a game and save journal messages is enabled, all those journal messages are available to me when I come back. And if it's disabled, my journal is just clear and clean every time I load into the game experience. So I'm not getting cluttered by, maybe some old information I don't think is as important anymore. And then finally, we have voice chat and video chat controls here. So if you want to use voice and video for your game, you can enable them using these settings right here. All right. Moving forward from there, we have our players tab. You already saw me use this a little bit earlier, and you can go ahead and see that I already have Dan added here. If I want to ever remove him for any reason, I can go ahead and remove him there. But just understand that this is where you go to manage who's sitting at the table. Moving over to content as well. The content tab is really sort of where you get to enable a bunch of pre-created information for your game. And so because I had already enabled the Tales from the Loop core rulebook here, I've got the universe enabled right there. And then Dan and I actually created a custom universe right here that is specifically for our Start Playing Games session where we created some of our little homebrew content that maybe we want to integrate into this particular game experience. And all I need to do as a game master is go ahead and enable that universe right there and save the change. And then in ways I'll get to in a little bit, we can go ahead and reference that custom content right alongside the core rulebook's content within Alchemy. And so that's generally how you enable and disable content as well. The only other thing worth speaking on is that each universe is actually tied to a theme. And so if you enable a universe with an interesting theme that you want to use, you can go ahead and select that universe's theme from the themes dropdown once the universe is enabled for your game like these two are. We finally have the safety tab right here. Now, before I get too deep into this, I want to kind of say real quick, Tales from the Loop, as Dan will get into in a little bit, is a game that can probably hit a bit closer to home than a lot, and it explores a lot of very tricky to navigate themes that some people might not be comfortable with, especially for Tales from the Loop, but really for any game you want. We have 3 safety tools in Alchemy that are always enabled for all players and game masters that really kind of help make sure that everybody is comfortable at the table and are feeling really good to go about the story and the narrative and where it's going. So I'm going to go into those right now. The first one we have on this page is lines and veils. Now, everyone who's in an Alchemy game on their account profile can set lines and veils for themselves. Lines are topics that you might see in a game and think they're not fun at all. You don't want to come across them. They're terrible and just not great for you. You can go ahead and set something as a line that you don't want to hear about in the narrative at all. If you set something as a veil, that might be something where it's okay to maybe explore that kind of content in the game, but maybe not in any kind of great detail or anything like that, right? It's okay to acknowledge that that thing exists, but maybe not go too far into it. And so every player in the game can set their lines and veils on their account profile, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But just understand that right here, everybody can see all of the lines and veils for everybody in the game, players or game masters, anonymous. So if Dan has lines and veils set, and I have lines and veils set, and another player has lines and veils set, you can't actually see whose lines and veils these are. That shouldn't matter. And so you can just see all of them here, and then both game masters and players can kind of understand where the limits of the narrative should be and can kind of account for that as the story unfolds. The second safety tool we have is mature content warnings. So let's just say that loading into my game, I know my game is going to have, let's say, sex in it. If I wanted to enable that as a content warning so that people coming into my game and opting into watching my game or spectating it know that sex is going to be involved, I can go ahead and enable mature content for the game so that it actually flags the game as mature. And then if I want to be more specific about the specific content warning, I can even go ahead and select sex right here in the little drop-down menu. We're going to see it pops up right there. And as soon as I hit the save button down here at the bottom, that will become a content warning for the game. If you see if you have a content warning you want to bring up that maybe isn't on that drop-down list, we also allow for typing in here. So let's just say I think Dan himself is a content warning for one reason or another. I can go ahead and type Dan in right here, press enter, and then Dan is added as a content warning as well. And then once I save my change, content warnings will actually be visible in the game lobby when you join in right here. So I'll show you that we specifically have these content warnings, and then it basically allows people to opt into that experience when they're joining a game, either as a game master, player, or spectator. And so those are two of the safety tools we offer in Alchemy. And that's all that's in the safety tab, but I'll show you where the third one is in just a minute here. The last thing here is that we have the streaming tab. It's still a little under construction, but just understand that we're creating tools in Alchemy to stream your games in the platform itself, as well as external streaming platforms as well. And so that tab is going to house a lot of those controls for broadcasting your live plays elsewhere within Alchemy or on external sites. But that's all coming up really soon. So that pretty much covers everything in game settings here. A couple other things here. We have gameplay settings, which just brings you to your sort of account information here, where you can set a couple things up related to you specifically in Alchemy. These gameplay settings here are really due to performance. So let's say that a player doesn't have maybe as good of a device as someone else does. They can go ahead and tweak these settings to their liking to maybe make Alchemy a little less taxing on their machine so it stops sputtering and they can get on and play the game without affecting anyone else on their side. Additionally, you can see all of your purchases from our marketplace in this tab. You can change your profile information like your email, your username, and stuff like that over there. And then the only other one I want to get into is the safety tab. Because like I was saying earlier with lines and veils, you can set your own personal lines and veils right here for your account. And these will be in the lines and veils section of the game settings for every game that your account is joined into, so that it's kind of automated and you don't really need to worry about setting them up on a per game basis. So this is where you can go to do this, and you can also add it access all of this information by clicking your little profile picture on the homepage, which should just be nested in the bottom left navigation bar. So that covers gameplay settings right here. Safety tools, all that actually does is take you back to the safety tab for the game that I already went over, but it's a really quick way to reference that information. And then finally, we have the X card here. So this is our third safety tool. If lines and veils as well as content warnings are great for preventing problematic content from appearing in your game, the X card is really great for actively addressing problematic content in your game. What anyone can do, player or game master, is that whenever the narrative is shifting in a way that you feel might be a little uncomfortable, they can click the X card right there and see that the X card was sent out to everybody else in the game anonymously. And so Dan on his side just hit the X card. And as you can see here, I was given a notification here saying, hold up, someone in this game is not comfortable with the current subject matter. It doesn't matter who said it. It doesn't matter what the subject matter is, because in a lot of cases, people will be able to recognize what it is. And then everybody has to click OK. And then from there, everyone acknowledges that the problematic content in the narrative should be steered away from, and everybody can contribute towards that happening, so that everyone's all comfy and cozy while playing their games here in Alchemy. We're going to have this streamer mode option here available to everybody real soon when streamer mode's all done. That's just going to take you back to those same streaming tools I had referenced a little bit earlier. And then the last two are really cool. We just released Zen mode pretty recently, And so what Zen mode is, we have this beautiful artwork with the music playing in Alchemy. And let's say that maybe the game master's spotlighting another player, and you don't really need all your character sheet and player information in front of you. Maybe you just want to kind of absorb the narrative and kind of appreciate everything unfolding. Or maybe you want to run Alchemy for your in-person games to help kind of manage your scenes and your music and things like that. Zen mode, when you click it, whether you're a player or game master, will actually just hide all of the UI elements. And so you can just see sort of everything here within Alchemy, in our sort of scene view here. So you can still appreciate the narrative and where it is and kind of watch everything unfold. But you don't really need to get kind of clogged by all the panels and stuff that you might feel are in the way in that particular moment. And so when you go ahead and do that, your options menu is still accessible. If you want to have your panels come back, you just click Zen mode again and everything pops right back on screen for you. And then the last thing as well is that we have this help option here. What help will do is it'll actually take you to our knowledge base. We have a pretty extensive knowledge base that kind of serves as our manual here in the platform. We have a bunch of categories here for everybody if they need help with anything. And so anyone can go ahead and view any number of the articles that we have available. And it's really great for people, especially after a seminar like this, where it's more of a crash course, to get a bit more of a full idea of what Alchemy is and kind of what everything is that Alchemy has to offer. The only other tab here is the feedback tab. We're super open to feedback about the platform, whether you want a different system that's not currently offered, or maybe you just have an idea about a cool upcoming feature. You can go ahead and write that in here and send all that information. When you click the white button down here after you put something in, it actually gets sent to us. We read them all and we incorporate that feedback, or at least log it on our side, so we can consider it as Alchemy continues evolving in the future. And so that basically covers everything in the options menu here. Going from there, this white button here is generally what you use to save a lot of the changes you might be making on anything in Alchemy. When it's not actually being used for anything, it serves as your dice tray. So Tales from the Loop is a D6 system, and so with that, when you click it, you'll see that we have the option of rolling between 1 and 6 six-sided dice. What I can do is go ahead and click. So let's say I want to roll 5d6 for something. I can go ahead and click that right there. And you can see here that it all rolls in the journal panel. If I have private rolls enabled, it only rolls for me. And it's just a quick way for me to make the rolls so I can, interpret their results and take the narrative further from there. We also have our mute and unmute button right here, so that if you want to kind of pause your audio from being transmitted to other people, you can go ahead and mute yourself. And then finally, if you're using our native app in Alchemy, you'll have this little caret right here, which allows you to select your audio input. If you don't have that caret because you're in our web browser, that's perfectly normal. The web browser will always take the default output device that browser is hooked up to for use within Alchemy. So that basically covers everything sort of in the bottom middle there for everybody. Now over here in the bottom right, we have a couple panels specifically to help game masters run the game. Now players are also going to have panels here. They're a little bit different, and they have more to do with players running the game themselves, and playing as their characters. This helps game masters set the story and the tone and distribute things to players on their side. So the first panel we have here is scenes. Scenes are kind of the bread and butter of what makes Alchemy Alchemy. You've been hearing me talk about these motion overlays and the background images and the music and things like that. And all of those things are run through scenes. So as you can see here, I have a bunch of scenes already preloaded in here, specifically because I've already enabled the core rulebook within Tales from the Loop. And if I wanted to, after I have added a scene to my game, I can go ahead and click it and do a couple things with it. First things first, I can go ahead and play the scene. So if I think the narrative is moving to a different location, I can go ahead and play the scene for that location. It fades out for everybody and then fades in so that everybody's kind of transported in that way at the same time. In addition to that, maybe I'm kind of prepping a scene on the side, right? My player's finding that shop that I wasn't expecting, and maybe I want to spin a scene up real quick for that. I can go ahead and click a scene that I've added to my game, and I can preview it. And so when I click preview, it's going to show that the scene and all the music and everything as it's playing, but it's actually going to continue the other scene for everybody else in the game. And so when I go ahead and click the X right here on the notification, it'll bring me back to the current scene being played, which is the same scene that all my players are currently looking up at that point. Scenes have notes as well associated with them, and I can view those notes by clicking the notes button right here. This is a really cool scene in particular because Summer Break and Killer Birds is actually the adventure that comes in the core rulebook for Tales from the Loop. And so what we've done here is included all the information around that adventure right here within the notes. And if I needed to for any reason, I can edit the notes as well, just by clicking and opening up to be edited. Uh, Finally, if I want to, I can edit the scene overall, which just lets me edit all the different areas of the scene, right? The environmental visual, the motion effect, the music, any ambient sounds, right? So if you're crawling through like sewers or something like that, and you want to do dripping water on cobblestones, you can add something like that. Or maybe let's say that, I go back to our sort of default Tales from the Loop scene here and I want to edit something to maybe give a different context, right? We have the four children who are sort of standing in the field out here looking over the cooling towers of the loop. But maybe I want to do something different. And so I can go ahead and add one of many motion effects that are enabled for this game, right? When I enable the content for our different universes earlier. And one of the ones that comes with our Alchemy Enhanced version of Tales from the Loop is this really cool motion effect that depicts kind of like a hole in a fence that shouldn't be crossed. And as soon as I add that into my game here, you'll see that we actually overlaid this fence image over the kids in the scene. And so it gives the scene a different context, right? Now they've broken into a restricted area of the loop. And now, the story might be going in a different direction there. And so it's really cool. You can edit scenes on the fly in that way, and use any content that's in any of the universes enabled for your game. Finally, for this tab, if you scroll all the way down, all of your scenes are currently added. You have this Add Scene button right here. And what that allows you to do is add any scenes into your game from any of the content enabled for your game. So I can add in any of the scenes from the core rulebook, or I can even add in this scene from Dan and I's universe that we had kind of created that's all of our own homebrew stuff, simply by clicking that button right there and then adding the scene using the white button at the bottom of the screen. And then finally, if I want to create a whole new scene from scratch, I'm free to do that by just clicking the Create Scene button right in the center of the modal there. So that kind of summarizes scenes in a bit of a nutshell there. From there, we have the Story tab. Now, I know I mentioned the notes in this particular scene. All the Story tab really is a place to display those same exact notes, but just in the UI, so you're not tapping into a modal all by itself and kind of take yourself out of the experience. So the Story tab is a really great way to sort of store scene notes within Alchemy, so that you're not really getting too pulled around different areas of the platform. GMs have the GM Actions tab right here, and players have just an Actions tab. Actions in Alchemy are basically quick macros. They're able to help you quickly roll dice, send messages, use sound effects, or maybe roll up a result on a roll table real quick. And basically, kind of cut through a lot of the process itself so that you can just kind of continue moving through the game from there. So as you can see here, we brought a couple of the roll tables from the core rulebook in as actions within Alchemy. And let's say that I need a name of an adult for some reason that the children are encountering in Tales from the Loop. I can go ahead and click the action right there. I can use the action. And now I've got a whole bunch of names here that I can see that are hidden because I've hidden GM roles enabled. And I can go ahead and just grab one of those names and kind of keep the narrative flowing. Very similar to scenes as well. You can add an action by scrolling down to the bottom and then either create your own or add one from any content enabled for your game. And then finally, we have handouts. Handouts are kind of those tangible props you'd want to give your players as the session's unfolding, just to kind of bring them into the moment a little bit more, right? So maybe I'm running a fantasy game and I'm inviting the party to a royal ball. Maybe if I was in person, I can do a little parchment kind of rolled up as an invitation and kind of cinch it off with a little bit of ribbon and then hand that to people and they can kind of unravel it and read it themselves and do things like that. Within Alchemy, you can basically do the same thing as a handout. So Nicholas's diary here is a handout from that adventure within the core rulebook. And so if I go ahead and take a look at this handout, we can see here that I've got this little diary page image brought up for Nicholas here, right? So I've got this image, I can go ahead and move it around, I can zoom in, zoom out, and I've got this supplementary text on the side here. What if I think that as the narrative's coming up, maybe one of the kids found this particular diary entry in the story. What I can do is go ahead and click right here on Nicholas's diary, and I can share it. Now, if I scroll down, I can see here that I can share it with Aaron, who is Dan's character here. And I can go ahead and just select Aaron, or if I wanted to share it with everybody all together, I can go ahead and select everyone right there. If we had more players in this particular game, you can share handouts with any number of players so that you can hide certain things from certain people if you'd like to do that. But once you do that, and I click save right here, I can see that Aaron's profile picture here, Dan's character, now appears on the handout, and that tells me that Aaron currently has access to it in his own handouts tab as a player. And then very similar to actions and scenes as well, if you go all the way down, you can go ahead and add a handout there. You can create a new one or enable one from any of your content universes enabled within your game. And so for Game Masters, that kind of summarizes everything in those sort of bottom right panels. We don't have too much more to go here. We've got 2 more panels right here in the sort of top left for Game Masters. First panel is the party panel. And this is a way where you can sort of view all of the people that are real and actually around the masters and all of your players. Now, what you can do here is you can actually, see people's names and things like that and statuses. And a lot of the options here really help you as a game master to interact with the players as the session's progressing forward. So first thing I can do here, if I click on Aaron here as a game master, so I can go ahead and view Aaron's character sheet. And so this will show me all the information, all the statistics, all the things I would need to know about Aaron as it comes to running the game as the game master. And so I can see all the statistics there. If I wanted to, as game master, I can go ahead and open Aaron's sheet to be edited. And let's say that I notice a mistake on the sheet, and I go to Aaron's stats and say that Aaron's a lot smarter with tech. And instead of a 1, he needs a 9,999 in tech. If I go ahead and save that change right there and go ahead and view his sheet again, we'll see that change has taken hold. That change has taken hold on Dan's side for his character as well. And so I have the ability to basically make any adjustments to a character sheet that I see might be needed for any reason. We have the trackers button right here. Trackers in Alchemy are sort of a feature that's great for tracking resources that can change a little more fluidly. So things like experience points, things like hit points. Dan will speak a little bit about luck in Tales from the Loop in a bit. What you can do with the trackers, set those things up on the character sheet, and then see the current value, see the max value for that particular tracker, and then make the adjustments as needed there as a game master. You can also bring out Aaron's token. I'll get into tactile mode in just a second here, but if I want to bring a token out on a battle grid for that particular player, I can click token right there and do that. I can whisper Aaron. So maybe I'm scheming with Dan on the side from some other players. If I click the whisper button right here, I'll see the whisper command sort of generates itself within my chat bar. And I can say, do you know the secret? And that message will also show up as gold here. You can see that it's specifically to Aaron. And then Dan on his side sees that message, and then he can actually whisper me back. And all that entire interaction there isn't actually visible to anyone else at the table. So if I need to scheme with a player for any reason, or maybe I want to sidebar my GM about a ruling or something, I can go ahead and whisper them just like that. And then finally here, we have 2 more here. Play basically just lets you sit down in Aaron's chair. And so if I click play here, I'll see that my screen changes a little bit. I see Aaron's character bar here, which is a player feature. I see his other panels here, which are player features. I can just sort of sit here and see Aaron directly as Dan sees him, although I do keep my GM panels in the bottom right. And then if I need to pull myself out as Aaron and back as the game master, I can go ahead and click the X button right here to pull myself back out. And then finally, we have status here. What statuses do is change your Alchemy username down here to whatever text you want it to say. So as you can see here, Dan had changed his status to injured. And so now, that's a condition in Tales from the Loop. I, as a game master, know that. All the players know that. And it's a good way to just kind of convey information very passively at a glance. Um, Another way I've seen people use these is maybe someone had to get up from their seat real quick and get on the phone. They can just say, be right back, AFK. Maybe they're going to the bathroom and they say bio. Those are all really good ways to kind of take advantage of statuses here. And then finally, if I want to flag myself, or if you click on your own particular uh, uh, icon, you can go ahead and set yourself as away, which will change your icon right here, just signifying that you're currently away from the game and you'll probably be right back. And then, yeah, you can change that back when you're back. So that's mostly everything in the party panel. The only other things is that if you click the plus button to add players right here, it'll bring you right back to the players screen in the game settings. And then maybe Dan's coming in a little too hot. I can go ahead and turn Dan's volume down so that he's not blowing out my ears anymore if I want to do something like that. So that's the party panel. We then have the NPC panel, and that's very similar to the party panel, but it's just specifically for all the characters that come up in the game that players in game that the players specifically don't control. So we have a couple characters here from the core rulebook's adventure. We have Mats here, and right now Mats is already added to the scene. If I wanted to add another NPC to the scene, I can click the Add NPCs button right there. Very similar to handouts, to actions, to scenes. I can create a brand new character on the spot, or pull up any character that's in any content enabled for my game already. Once I've got characters in the scene, they're automatically added as hidden, which means that the players can't see them from the NPCs panel on their side. Now I can either drag a character out into this sort of area so that now Dan can see this character, or if I want to, I can click on them and just click the show button here. Or if I want to take them away, click the hide button in that same spot to basically remove the character from being visible to players altogether. Now, very similar, view as a game master allows me to view and edit an NPC in any way I see fit. The big difference here for players is that when players click and view an NPC, they'll see their profile picture, they might see a public description of one's available, but they can't see any of the statistics or anything like that. Very similar tokens, I can drag tokens out for NPCs as well. I can play as NPCs, I can see their trackers, I can show or hide them. And then similar to handouts, if I want to, I can actually share an NPC with the player. So if I want Dan to take control of Mats for any reason, or maybe I'm running a fantasy game and I have a ranger who has a bear as their companion, I can go ahead and share that NPC with that particular player. And what that allows them to do is two things. One, if they click on that NPC in the panel, they'll be able to see and edit the NPC in the same way that game masters can. And the second thing is that they actually gain the ability to move that NPC's token around the game experience within Alchemy. So that's mostly everything with NPCs. The only other things is that you can click the remove button to remove them. And then you can click the journal button to send the NPC to the journal, right? So maybe the adventure's unfolding and I kind of just want to sort of put the NPC kind of at the front of the queue here, right at this moment they maybe walk in the door. If I click journal, it'll actually send that NPC's name and their photo into the journal. And I can click on it, and very similarly to clicking on view from the NPCs panel, you can see all the same information that you would normally have access to. And so that generally sort of wraps up NPCs. The only other quick things I want to touch on, we have turn order right here. This is for, in Tales from the Loop when you get into trouble and you need to kind of break things down into a turn order. This is commonly initiative in a lot of other games as well. When you click that, everybody will basically establish a turn order according to the mechanics of the game, and then you can just sort of cycle through everybody's turn, as needed, and then, remove turn order when, the trouble has been, worked through. These four buttons are basically the last thing I'm going to go over from here. The first one here is this map icon. It's called Tactical Mode. When you go ahead and click Tactical Mode, you'll be able to see any kind of battle map that might be uploaded as part of a scene. So in this case, for the core rulebook's adventure, Tales from the Loop is not really a battle grid heavy game. You don't really use a lot of like tokens or minis or things like that. But we decided to add the sort of map for the adventure here so that everyone kind of has access to it. And so if I wanted to, I can go ahead and click token for Mats here, and I can go ahead and place him on the grid wherever he, might be. So let's say Mats moves to Donald Dixon's house. I can even move him just like that. And so this would be where you can kind of upload your battle maps and bring your tokens out, and do a couple fancy things related to specifically running like an encounter in a game. A couple other tools we have for this. We have a measuring tool, which allows you to sort of drag and understand basically how many squares or hexes are between 2 points on the map. If I wanted to, I can actually add fog. So this is great for fog of war if people are moving through a dungeon or something, and you want to sort of reveal that at a time. I can go ahead and paint this map dark so that I can, as the game master, can see this little geography pattern in there. But players will not actually be able to see anything at all within that area. And so, similarly, if I want to erase the fog as well, I can go ahead and use the brush to erase fog, all the same. And then finally, the last two things, I can either fog up the whole map, or I can go ahead and reveal the entire map as well. Map phases are great for storing multiple maps on the same scene if you want to do something like that. So if I just get myself back to the move tool and then click map phases, we actually uploaded all the different sort of images, like house diagrams and things like that to this particular scene for running this adventure. So I can go ahead and pull it up right there. Map phases are really cool if you have like a 6-photo battle map where maybe it's a volcano and the lava is kind of coming up tier after tier. It's a really cool way to sort of do something like that. Then you have a couple general settings like hiding or showing the grid, and then adjusting the map scale and grid's opacity right there. And so that kind of summarizes tactical mode in a bit of a nutshell. So going back to story mode after clicking out of tactical mode, we have audio settings right there. As a game master, you have the ability of controlling the mix of a couple different music tracks that are all hooked up to the scene. Music is great, so if I want to add an ambient track over my scene, I can go ahead and pull, the music slider up like that. And you can suddenly hear the music from Tales from the Loop starting to kind of come through the game experience. If I have ambient noise on the track as well, that's stored in the scene, and I can go ahead and turn that up. And so in this case, you should be able to hear sort of like bird noises going on in the background as well. And so when you kind of bring these all together, you get this kind of like nice little mix that really helps kind of make the scene feel dynamic, makes it feel alive, things of that nature. And then finally, the sounds down here are specifically for any sound actions in Alchemy, right? Like how I mentioned before, you can play sounds using actions. This will control the volume of those within Alchemy, as well as any extra little sound effects. Like how in certain systems, we might have a little, sound effect if you roll a 20 on a 20-sided die. But all this together allows the game master to basically control kind of the mix of what players should be able to hear. Players have a sound panel as well, but it only allows them to adjust the total volume, but you as a game master get to kind of control the percentages of the feed. The only other thing here I want to talk about is this really nifty Alchemy Enhanced triangle here. Alchemy Enhanced is a type of addition we give to a bunch of titles on our marketplace. When you go ahead and buy a title on Alchemy, you have the option of buying the enhanced version of it. That comes with a bunch of unique soundscapes, background images, and motion effects. Things of that nature. It also comes with 9 minutes of dynamic looping audio. And so what you're actually hearing in your ears right now are 3 separate tracks that kind of come through simultaneously. And so if I want to, I can isolate those in any way I'd like, right? So I have some of the percussions coming up here, if I have that. I've also got some of these sort of 80s synth, if I bring it down there. And I've got a couple other sounds related to this sort of horns that come through the scene, and I can go ahead and isolate those in any way I need to right here. And so that kind of covers sound in Alchemy pretty well. So moving from there, we have Universe Search here. This will always be available to game masters and will sometimes be available for players. If I go ahead and click how to play here, we'll see that we have a bunch of content here for that Dan and I had initially made. And so if I want to, I can go ahead and view any of that content right here. Or I can go ahead and send it to the journal. So I'm going to send these to the journal. And this actually allows Dan to see these articles as a player if he needs to reference them for any reason. Maybe he's playing a jock, within the game. I can go ahead and pull the jock up right here, send it, and now he's got the very quick rules references that come with the Tales from the Loop core rulebook right there. And then finally, we can show or hide video chat. So again, Alchemy comes with video. All this does is open or close the drawer for any cameras that might be broadcasting. Of course, Dan and I are right here on Discord, so you might not actually see us in the video window right there. And then finally, the last thing right here at the top will always display the scene's title as well as the scene's location. And then if you want, you can click into it and see all the credits for any of the audio or visual assets that are kind of being used in that scene, if the scene's creator had happened to add them. And so this kind of rounds out the full Game Master experience within the game experience in Alchemy. Right, so this is kind of what everything that a Game Master will see, as well as some aspects of what players will see as well. But it's a bit of a holistic crash course in sort of what that looks like and how to kind of run something in the moment. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to throw things over to Dan right now.
Right, so that was the aspect of the alchemy portion of things, and today I'm gonna bring you into the actual gameplay version of things. This is Tales from the Loop on Alchemy. Now, with all the talk of tech and all the talk of like kind of going into the mechanics of things and how the innards of alchemy works, I need to shift us. Okay, we need to take an adventure into the 80s, right? And this is how we're gonna do it. I want everybody that's watching right now, I want you all to close your eyes for a moment, okay? Now imagine yourself grabbing your Transformers lunchbox out of your locker, okay? You bring up your Walkman's headphones, you put them on top of your head there, and when you do, Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up starts blasting. Okay. And as soon as it's about to like start off and you're going to have a great day, you get smashed in your shoulder and somebody's running down the hallway. Your papers and books go flying up in the air. And as they run past you in the hallway, a football goes flying overhead and lands in their arms. People begin cheering, but the bell begins to ring. You see that you're going to be late to class, so you start scurrying to gather your books and your papers off the floor, but then suddenly somebody touches your hand accidentally as they try to help you pick up your papers as well. You look up and you're looking directly into the eyes of your crush. What do? Well, that's kind of the basics of one part of Tales from the Loop. We're going to bring you into the 80s. All right. Welcome to the 80s. This is the settings and story of Tales from the Loop. And really what we need to understand is there's not too much in terms of lore when it comes to Tales, more along the lines of like where this takes place. So one of the first things you need to know is that this world takes place in an alternate universe where in the 80s, a lot of weird things are happening. But the biggest difference is that technology has advanced far better or far more than they have even in recent days. So going back to how that all began is that the Russians or the Soviets back then discover what is called the magnetron effect. And the magnetron effect essentially is just using the Earth's magnetic pull to then kind of opposites going, or same poles of the magnet going against each other, and creating what is essentially anti-gravity. Now, this anti-gravity took place in the 50s, and that kind of just bolstered invention and discoveries and all kinds of things, especially when it comes to science. Now, that in turn kind of created a boom of inventions, and one of which were the self-balancing machines created by the Japanese, which eventually turned into robots. Kind of bipedal robots walking around, helping out. Now, that also got the interest of the government, and the world's governments, that is. And the governments have put together funds to fund 2 particle accelerators via the core rulebook here. There's 2 particle accelerators that are located in Sweden and the US. The one in Sweden takes place in kind of a 3-island chain that is more swampy and muddy and rainy and a lot of times snowy. and the other one takes place in Nevada. It takes place almost kind of near Las Vegas or the Hoover Dam. And this one is more like arid climate, very dry, not as much rain, sometimes snow, but otherwise, that's kind of the main differences between the two. They try to keep things very similar in terms of the way the game is played in these locations, but notes that either one of these are very viable to play in. The two things that we need to know is that the Facility for Research in High Energy Physics and the Department of Advanced Research and Technology are the names of these different locations via either in Sweden or in Utah. I'm sorry, in Nevada. But you can see, obviously, it's a mouthful to say. So the locals have just begun to call them the Loop. Now, why is this important? Well, in the time of the Loop in the 80s, things have started to go awry. Weird things are happening around where the loops are located. Secret experiments, things are being had underground where these loops are located, and it is leaking into the local neighborhoods. And now it's up to you as kids to go out and adventure and find out what's happening with these mysteries and possibly solve these mysteries. And we're going to talk about why would your kid even be interested in going out and solving these mysteries and not just leaving it to the adults. So let's go ahead and jump into character creation. So first off, I'm going to pop off here so that I can automatically open up my character creation sheet. And the first things you're going to see here are the character's type, name, and age. Now, the type is somewhat similar to character class in other games and everything like that, but you can see here that there's a little drop-down menu, and you can select from any of the prearranged types here. And by doing so, it'll give you some information necessary to kind of understand them. Well, here, I'm going to go with the computer geek, but what you really need to see here and what you really need to remember are the 3 key skills here on the bottom. These three key skills for my computer geek are program, calculate, and comprehend. And what this will do is help us divvy out our skill points later. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to select my age. In Tales from the Loop, you play from age 10 to 15. The age specifically has to do with obviously how old you are, but how many attribute points you'll get to spend. So if I'm, let's say 13, I'll get to use 13 attribute points. Pretty simple. The other thing that age has to do with is what is called luck. And I'll tell you all about luck here in just a moment, but it is depicted from your age. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select a name from the drop-down menu here and kind of look for maybe a nerdy name or a geeky name or something like that. You know, we're going to go with Daniel, but I'm just going to type in a Dan because I'm a geek. But before I take off from this screen here, I want you to see that there are several ways that you can actually get a character into this game. First, obviously, is to make a character yourself from scratch. And then the second one here is in the library. Now, the library is made up of all the characters that you can create before the game as a player, if you'd like. Or if your GM maybe has some pre-made characters that they've made for you that you can just select from. Now, Alchemy has created a bunch of pre-made characters for you already if you want to select from them and just get started immediately. Now we're going to create a character straight up from scratch. So all we're going to do is click that check mark at the bottom and you'll be good to go. And you have all the things you'll need from there. Now, the next step we're going to do is to actually edit the character sheet. So you're going to click this symbol dead center, and then you're going to click the top left, and that is going to be your edit. And that's going to lead you to our sheet. So the first thing I'm going to do on the sheet is immediately I'm going to go over to token size and I'm going to set that to 1:1. As Vinny had explained before, this isn't a game necessarily that is that really needs like a tactician mode or needs like maps or anything like that. But just in case the GM wants to toss your token down on a sheet and say, hey, this is where you're located right now. Maybe the party's split and some of you are at school, some of you are at the hideout, whatever it might be. you can kind of use the token as such. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top, and actually that symbol at the top, I can click that and I can open it up and give myself my little avatar for my token. So now that we've got that set up, we can go directly into the actual character sheet here. The first thing you'll see here is the character's drive, your kid's drive. What makes them want to go out on these adventures? In Tales from the Loop, you play as kids that live ordinary yet boring lives. So you might be doing a lot of homework for school. You might have trouble at home. Maybe your parents are getting a divorce. Maybe you haven't seen your sister in 3 months and it's starting to drive a lot of tension in the house. There are reasons why your kid would want to get away from it all and just go and search out the next big thing. Well, here, obviously, you can see that there are different drives that you can check down here by just clicking the arrow, or you can randomize by clicking the little randomize button right next to it. Moving on, you can see that we have the anchor. Your anchor in this game is one of 2 ways that you can completely heal from completely broken to fully healed. Your anchor should be somebody that is an adult or somebody that is very, very close to you emotionally, somebody that you can spend a scene with, talking with them and conversing and really getting back to being your normal self again. So make sure your anchor is somebody that you can trust, somebody that you care about. Maybe it's the guy at the comic book store for my geek. Then there is your problem. And as I said, Tales from the Loop can really dive into some issues that happen in kids' lives that are pretty realistic. So you could pick a problem such as your parents are getting a divorce, like I was saying before, or maybe your teachers are, they have something against you. Maybe you're being bullied at school, something that your kid doesn't necessarily like talking about, but absolutely affects who they are and how they role play because it's always in the back of their mind kind of thing. Problem is really good for the GM to be able to use later on in the story to help spice up the narrative. The next thing here is going to be your kid's pride. Now, your pride is something that your kid should always be able to fall back on, something that they believe in themselves about. It could be something simple as they think they're the smartest kid in the school, so they think they always have their smarts to fall back on. So at any point during the game, once per session, you can check your pride. And by checking your pride, you basically take the situation, make sure that it kind of matches up with why you should succeed, because that's what your pride says. And you will automatically succeed in that trouble, overcoming that trouble. So if, for instance, I'm hacking a computer and I fail it, but I know I'm the smartest kid in school, I should be able to do this. I'm going to check my pride once per session and say, you know what, I should be able to hack this computer right away because of my pride. GM will yay or nay it, and then if so, then you automatically succeed and you move on. The next part is one of my favorite parts of the character sheet. Even though it has no mechanical value whatsoever, it still helps kind of depict who your character is and describing their personality. So here you'll pick your favorite song. Now you pick your favorite song from the 80s, maybe even the 70s, if that's who your kid, might be listening to, but it helps set the tone of the adventure. And also it helps give you a little bit of like, what would my kid be listening to at this point in their lives in the 80s? The next portion here is relationships, and relationships are had between each of the characters, each of the player characters, and 2 NPCs right off the bat. So you can see these little drop downs will give you some pre-written ones that you can choose from, or you can of course choose from your own. Now you want to make these as easy to kind of read as possible. It could be either you and another player are brother and sister, or it could just be, maybe they're friends at school because they share the same class. All these things can be like that. The one thing you want to try to avoid is make sure that they're not antagonistic. You don't want to hate on each other. You don't want to be evil or anything like that. Kids in this should be friends or somewhat friends to be able to create a friend group. And as the other relationships go for NPCs, you're going to create a relationship with an NPC with your GM. So whenever you create a relationship here for an NPC, your GM should tell you whether or not an NPC is viable for the adventure you're about to go on. You don't want to make you don't want to have a relationship with an NPC that you'll never see, is what I'm trying to say. So make sure that it makes sense for the story to have that sort of relationship with that NPC. Pretty simple. The next portion is hideout, and hideout is essentially the same thing as your anchor when it comes to what it does mechanically. Heals you up completely from nothing, from broken to completely healed. Now, what a hideout is obviously some place that you can go out and be alone with your friends, some place that is secret, or some place that you feel safe with your friends, that you go to talk about things, or you know, maybe you go to play games that you can play with your friends, like maybe a card game or maybe chess or whatever it might be that you want to do. You go out to this location. It could be a tree house. It could be a storm dream, or maybe it's you meet up under a bridge. It should be something that an NPC, any other NPC, shouldn't be able to find, and you should be able to safely go back and recover. The last part here on this page is the description. And the description is pretty simple. All you need to do is type in maybe, you know, what your character looks like. Maybe it's something that everybody knows about them, whatever it might be, you know, for the public's view. And then speaking of this little toggle here at the bottom, that toggle will essentially make it so that anybody viewing your character via clicking on your token on the top right of the screen, they can see this description. Now, they'll only be able to see this description if you have it toggled on. If you have it toggled off, the only thing they'll be able to see is your avatar or whatever you've uploaded for your image. That's it. So all this other stuff is still secret from them. The only thing that it shows is the description. The next thing we're going to do is scroll up to the top and we're going to click stats. Now the stats are going to be your attributes and your skills. Attributes go from 1 to 5 and skills go from 1 to 3. Now for attributes, I'm going to say it's pretty easy. Like I said before, it's just directly represented by your age. So I'm 13 years old, so my character will have 13 points to spend in attributes. So I'm a geek, so I'm probably going to be pretty good in tech, probably, you know, just as good in mind. So I'm going to say there, and then adding those together, I've got 2 more skill points to use, or I'm sorry, 2 more attribute points to use, and there we go. So 13 points, pretty easy, pretty simple. Even easier is the skills, because skill points, no matter what, via the whatever type you are or whatever, you know, whatever age you are, it's always going to be 10 points to spend. Now, as I said, you can max out on skills at 3, but only for those 3 key skills that we had talked about at the very beginning. And for my geek, it was program, calculate, and comprehend. So for program, all you need to do is click these skills that you want to add some bonuses to. And I'm going to add a couple there, maybe add a few to calculate, because they're going to be really good at calculating. So I'm going to max that out. And then comprehend. So we're going to go comprehend and get a couple to comprehend. Now for everything else outside of key skills, we'll only be able to max out at 1. Really easy. So we've already used 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 3 more. So I'm going to say, you know what? My character, maybe they're good at sneaking. So I'm going to add 1 to sneak. Maybe they're really fast for whatever reason. And then maybe they're good at building. We're going to go with a tinker. So I'm going to add 1 to that as well. And just like that, attributes and skills have been divvied out. Pretty easy. Next thing here is equipment. In Tales from the Loop, equipment isn't very prevalent. You might get a few items here or there that might be able to add some bonus dice to your rolls. If so, all you need to do is either go to equipment here in your character sheet or on the bottom left of your screen when you're in the main window, and just click add item. When doing so, you'll be presented with a bunch of already predetermined items that the core rulebook has, or you can create your own depending on how you want to go about it. Now, let's say, for instance, you find a ladder. Obviously, a ladder could be pretty useful in situations. So they give that a +2 to the amount of dice that it gives you. So you get 2 dice here. The next thing you'll see is the iconic item. The iconic item is something that all the characters, no matter what, will have. This item cannot be stolen, broken, or otherwise lost. This will always be on the character no matter what, and it should kind of represent your character or your kid. So for instance, my geek here can have something like a toy lightsaber, or maybe a pocket calculator, or even a computer that they can use at home that maybe other people can't. Whatever it is, whenever you select this, you're going to be able to use this item as many times as you want, as long as it pertains to the situation at hand during the game. And what that means is, let's say I go to hack that computer again and I go to calculate. Well, I'm going to see that maybe there's like some equation that I might be able to do with this. So I'm going to use my pocket calculator to help me hack into this computer. I'm going to get a +2 to the roll. So no matter what the iconic item is, whatever it is, it's always a +2 dice to the roll. So +2d6 to the roll. That's how it rolls. And that's basically how iconic items work. Trackers in this are all automatically set up for you, but the first thing and the one thing I want to look at here is luck. Luck is another thing in this game, and it's essentially a free reroll. And we'll talk about that here in a second about what rerolls are. Basically, how luck is calculated is they take the number 15 and then subtract your age from it. So 15 minus 13 for me gives me 2 luck. That's basically how it goes. Everything else is pretty standard. You have your conditions, which essentially is health in this. Then you have experience and check your pride. So you can look at all that once we get to the next portion. So after all that, though, your character is created and you're going to need to hit that little check mark at the bottom. Don't hit the X at the top, because the X at the top will exit out and not save any of your progress. So hit that X, hit the check mark at the bottom, and your character is saved. And there you go. You can see all our stats are good to go on the left-hand side. Now, making a roll in this is simple. In game, what they call it is basically getting over trouble or overcoming trouble. Whatever trouble the GM throws your way, you're going to have to make a roll for. And to make a roll, all you need to do is click a skill, and then you're going to click roll either in the center here, or you can go to that skill again, right click and roll that way. Whatever you want to do to be able to roll it, that's fine. I like right clicking because it's right there. Then let's say, for instance, I fail a roll, right? There, I don't get a single 6, because that's how you succeed in Tales from the Loop. You need to get a 6 on any one of the dice. Any single one dice is a success. So on this one, I would succeed, obviously, because you can see that it is a success. But let's say I didn't succeed. What can I do to try and succeed even though I didn't? Well, the first option you have is called push, and you can click the push button right here, and it will re-roll your dice for you. And as you can see, it gave me a success, and it's successful. The one caveat with just pushing a roll, that will automatically give you a condition. And what is a condition in Tales from the Loop? Well, it's essentially how they calculate health. So in Tales from the Loop, you, as your kids, your player kids, cannot die, but you can be hurt. So how does getting hurt work? Well, conditions, you take a condition by clicking the conditions meter right next to your avatar in the center here. And then you can move this little bar left and right. And you can see you can move it all the way up to 4 without anything except for it deducting from your dice pool here. And then on the very right, you have broken, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But I took a condition, so I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to mark 1, and I'm going to click the check mark, and now I have 1 condition. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that when you make another roll, no matter what it is, it will have 1 less dice per condition in that roll. So you can see here, instead of rolling the 8, I roll 7. So what happens when you take too many conditions? What happens if you get hurt in the game, or your GM has you take a lot of conditions until you've taken 5? When you take your 5th condition, you are considered broken. In this game, you don't die or go unconscious just because you're broken. What happens is that you're going to fail every single check that you're going to have at that point while you're broken. So you become sort of useless in the moment, but you're still up and going. So make sure that you have all your other kids or all your other friends helping you out in that situation to head back to your hideout or head back to your anchor to heal up completely. So once we go back to our conditions here, once we go back to rolling, what's another way we can try to succeed in rolling? Well, we talked about push. The next thing we can talk about is luck. And luck is basically the exact same thing as push. The one difference is that you don't take a condition when you re-roll. So what you do is you're going to click your luck there. You're going to -1 because you know what? That's how many I used. I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to re-roll this, but I'm going to use luck. And by using luck, when you go to push it, when you go to push that roll, now, now you don't have to take a condition, basically a free re-roll. And by doing that, yeah, I succeeded, that kind of thing. So you can push a roll, but with the caveat of taking a condition, or you can use your luck and not take a condition while re-rolling. The last thing you can do to try and succeed on something that you've already failed is, let's say for instance, I'm hacking that computer, I fail, and I want to check my pride. Well, here on the right, you can see on one of my trackers is to check my pride. I can use it once per session. I just click on it to note that I've used it, and I automatically succeed on the roll, as long as it has to do with my pride. That's basically it. The next thing that we need to talk about really quick is how skills kind of work in Tales from the Loop. What happens if I get more than one success on something that only needed one success? Well, if you click into the journal here, if you click into the journal entry that had your dice roll, you can see some stuff. So the one thing that you'll take note of is the bonus effect. Every single skill has a different set of bonus effects, and each one of the bonus effects that might be on this list can be bought with an extra success. So let's say, for instance, I get 2 successes on something, but I only needed 1. I can use that extra success to go into my bonus effect here and buy a bonus effect to it. So that's basically how extra successes and bonuses work. I always say it's best practice to go in and whenever you make a roll, just go in and click your card and it'll show you what you can do with a fail, a success, or even a bonus success. Then we have items. So if you go to your actions here, you can see your iconic item is always going to be set up here. How does your iconic item work? Well, like I said before, basically if there's a situation where you can use your item, it's going to add an additional 2 to the pool. So if I go to calculate something and I have a pocket calculator, I'm going to make a calculate roll, and then I'm going to add my iconic item by rolling that as well. And by doing so, I can now add all these together, and I've had 3 successes versus 2. So that basically is how you would use any kind of item in this game, whether it be iconic or not. If you have added an item and you don't see it here in your actions, just go to your equipment and you can see that the ladder is there. You just need to equip it. So all you need to do is go to this little dot here to the very right, click it on, that will equip it. And now in your actions, you have your +2 ladder. And it'll do the exact same thing as Arconic because it's 2, but if it was 1, it would roll 1 die, and if it was 3, it would roll 3. Pretty easy. The last thing I want to talk about is like, how do you get your conditions back? And we talked about your anchor, we talked about the hideout, but another way you can get health back in the moment is by using a lead roll. If for whatever reason you aren't broken and you want to heal somebody else, or if they're not broken and you want to heal them, you can use a lead roll. If you roll lead and then click into it, you'll see that here you can use your success to heal them. Now you can also do some bonus stuff. So if you have an extra success, you can heal them even more per like 1 success per condition, or you can even heal yourself of that condition. Now be wary whenever you use your lead to try and heal somebody, because if you fail, you will then take a condition yourself. So if you're trying to heal somebody who's angry and trying to heal that condition off of them, and then you fail, you then become angry as well. And now, you know, you can see how that ball starts going, or that ball starts rolling. All right. And then let's see. Once we have talked about that, I need to jump over really quick to the GM's kind of side of things. The one thing that kind of needs to be said is that there is no combat, right? There is no combat in Tales from the Loop. So how do NPCs work? How do they react? How do you play with those NPCs as a GM? Well, if you look at the NPCs, you're not given a stat block with them, but you are given a massive description. And so when you go to play Tales from the Loop, make sure you go to the NPCs and read their descriptions, because it'll give you an idea of who they are, what they're doing in the moment, possibly how they're connected to the story, and everything you'll need to know to play those characters, because everything is done basically off the cuff. Whatever you think they might be doing is something that they'll do in that scene. The one thing that you'll see on this sheet, if you will, is the special attributes. Some NPCs will rarely have what is called special attributes, and it might be something that they're exceptionally good at. So for instance, let's say there's a dog or a guard dog or something like that that is chasing your kids. Well, if it's a regular dog, it only takes one success to run away from it via, you know, making a get out of trouble roll. But if there's a special attribute there, and those, let's say it's 4 legs are better than 2, that's the special attribute, and it has a 2 next to it, that means instead of 1 success that they'll need to get away from that creature, now they need 2. It basically gives them a bit of difficulty in certain aspects of those NPCs, if that makes sense. Another thing I want to talk about is that this story is collaborative, meaning that Tales from the Loop is a very, like I said before, off the cuff kind of way of storytelling. So when you as a GM describe a situation, don't be afraid to talk to your players and ask them, well, what does that character look like? Or what is the weather outside? Or, you know, you're trying to tell the story with them. So allow them to have input in the scenes, giving them a bit of push and pull on determining what might be happening or exactly what the scene might look like. That just kind of gives the GM a little less to worry about in certain situations. There are 2 ways to run Tales from the Loop. One is a mystery, which is kind of like a one-shot, where you basically go into the mystery, you solve it, and you're done. The other way to run Tales from the Loop, which is really cool, is what's called a mystery landscape. And a mystery landscape is basically an open world concept where you have the entire map and then you have many different points of interest. If the kids, or when the kids go to those points of interests, there might be a mystery involved in that location. So they can basically explore the map and explore the area, and while doing so, run into different mysteries. And they, of course, can pick up, receive, use, go to these different mysteries however they like. They can have over there, you know, they go to this mystery and maybe they don't want to solve that one, and they go to this one over here and they find out, oh yeah, we really like this mystery. And then they can, of course, run it as they wish. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of mechanics is I've talked about how the situations are handled in terms of like there's no combat or anything, but know that no matter what the situation is, there is no initiative, there is no combat. So you need to handle the situation more often than not with only a single roll. So if your GM tells you you've come up to trouble, there's not going to be a round of combat or anything like that. You're just going to make a single roll determined by you or the player, or the GM or the player. And once that roll is done, then the scene is essentially over. You kind of solve it and tell the story, you know, forthwith. But what happens when there is something that requires multiple rolls? That's when something called extended trouble comes into play. Extended trouble is basically that quintessential end of story, end of game, culmination of all things, plan goes into effect kind of situation. So what you need to do is, first and foremost, the GM will set the stakes. We'll kind of say, if you guys fail this, this is what happens. It could be a very bad thing or maybe not so bad, but it should be pretty important. Then the GM will set a threat level, basically saying, you know what, to succeed on this thing, you're going to need 6 successes in total throughout the group. That's going to be the difficulty or the threat level of this. Then the kids are all going to make a plan. Who's going to be doing what? Maybe you're going to have somebody over there, you know, trying to gain the attention of who you're trying to sneak past. Then you're going to have somebody sneak in. Then you're going to have the computer geek hack the computer, and then you're going to have the jock go in and steal the item that you're getting. Whatever it is a series of actions that need to take place. And by doing so, you've created a scene in your head. The next thing you need to do is play out each one of these scenes, and each one of these scenes includes a roll. When they roll, you're going to count the number of successes up, and each one of you will then add your successes to the next person, to the next, until you have a pool of successes. That will go towards the threat level. Now, once all is said and done, you have the outcome, and that's when all of your successes go against the threat level. Have you gotten enough successes to meet that threat level? If you have, you did it. You beat the bad, you beat the big bad. You snuck in and you stole the thing. Whatever it might be, you've succeeded. But if you've only got half, let's say you've only got 3 out of 6, as long as it's half or above, you can then start to take conditions. Your kids can start to take conditions. 1 condition per success to try and meet that 6. So you'll need 3 here. So maybe 1 kid takes 2 conditions and another takes a single. And then you've met it and you've succeeded. If you don't manage to get 3 or half, at least half, then it's a complete failure. Unfortunately, if you only get 2 out of 6 here, it's a complete failure and your GM tells you what happens next. So with that, I'm going to leave you off. I'm going to give you some documentations here in the description of the video below that you guys can check out for easy to use. Get quick start documents basically that you can kind of read through, some articles that you can easily kind of run through how to create a character, getting into trouble, all the things you need mechanically to play Tales from the Loop. Vinny, I thank you very much for allowing me to talk about Tales from the Loop here for an extended amount of time. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you all for joining us. I hope that you learned a little bit of something from Alchemy and a little bit of something from Tales from the Loop. And I hope you guys jump into the loop as soon as you can to experience the game for yourself. I hope if you've watched this video, you've learned something. If you liked what you see, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below. And that way you can get notified when we put out another video. And comment below with what system you'd like to see us talk about next. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.